the command and control, the way you network.
More now from the meeting of the U.S. Conference of Mayors being held in Washington, D.C. Among the featured speakers for this session are Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley and Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey. You're watching live coverage on C-SPAN 3.
And young people. Our focus at that time was the separation of immigrant children from their parents, and we were there to try and visit some of them and to urge the President and his administration to reunite them with their parents as soon as possible. Our request to visit the children and young people was denied by the Department of Health and Human Services. With our strong voices, they were heard, and mayors from across the country issued a clarion call that separating children and their parents is not who we are as a nation, that it was resulting in great harm to those affected, and that such shameful policies should never again be implemented in our nation. While we were there, Mayor Margo and his wife Adair took the opportunity to brief us on the historic, economic, and cultural connections between El Paso, Ciudad Juarez, and the surrounding areas on both sides of the border, which are in fact united into a single international metropolitan region. We're very pleased that Dee and Adair are here with us today, and that Mayor Margo has agreed to brief us all on his city in the international metropolitan region, of which it is the center. I expect he'll also have a few thoughts on the immigration challenges facing us today. Please join me. After this video, I want you to please join me in welcoming El Paso Mayor Dee Margo.
Thank you, and thank you, Steve, for that warm and gracious introduction. I'm not going to talk about migration per se. I just left a panel where we spent an hour talking about it with other mayors from Brownsville and Mesa, Arizona. But I want to acquaint you with El Paso. El Paso is the 6th largest city in Texas, and we are the 19th largest city in the United States. We like to say we are the nexus of 3 states, New Mexico, Chihuahua, and Texas, 2 countries, the U.S. and Mexico, and a region surpassing 2.5 million in population. We have the largest binational, bilingual, bicultural workforce in the world with an average age of 31. We are ranked as the safest city in the United States with a population greater than 500,000, but we are also more than stats and factoids. As a binational region, we are 400 years old. We are situated at the base of the Rockies. We are considered to be high desert. We're 4,000 feet above sea level. And our city surrounds a mountain with a state park within our city limits. Our history dates back to the Spanish conquistadors, as we were the stopping point between Mexico City and Santa Fe on the Rio Grande. We were the Pass of the North, or El Paso del Norte. And until 1848, El Paso was actually located on the south side of the Rio Grande. Today, we are a global metroplex seamlessly blending U.S. and Mexican traditions and cultures. Our families live and work on both sides of the border. We are the 10th largest U.S. land port with over $82 billion in export and import trade. We have 6 land bridges that accommodate 23,000 legal pedestrians coming north every day. And we have 21 million private passenger vehicles on an annual basis that come north. There are 115,000 jobs in El Paso and 559,000 jobs in the state of Chihuahua, Mexico, which depend on our cross-border trade. El Paso accounts for 13% of the total Texas goods exported. Exports have increased 10.1% annually for each of the last 10 years. And contrary to what you may hear or perceive, our relationship with Mexico has ushered in an era of exponential economic growth and regional participation. 94 Fortune 500 companies reside in Juarez, Mexico for manufacturing assembly. This is the Maquiladora program, where we take U.S. raw materials, they're sent to Mexico for manufacturing assembly, and then returned to the U.S. The duties are paid on the labor value added. With more than 300 sunny days a year, we're perfect for year-round outdoor activities. Hueco Tanks, which is a rock formation just east of El Paso, attracts rock climbers from around the world. The natural beauty of El Paso is second to none and offers a unique experience for all visitors. By uniting development and preservation efforts, El Paso has strategically grown in a manner that celebrates our natural beauty while modernizing our infrastructure and increasing regional amenities. We recently passed a $473 million quality of life bond issue to construct a world-class children's museum, a Mexican-American cultural center, a state-of-the-art multi-purpose and performing arts center in our downtown area, and swimming and diving facilities for local and regional competitions. We also have rebuilt a vintage electric streetcar route in our downtown with 6 refurbished streetcars that were built in 1935, and I'm told that the design of these cars was approved by FDR himself. These same cars also used to travel between El Paso and Juarez. We built a AAA ballpark downtown, which was ranked in 2014 as the #1 minor league ballpark in the United States for our Pacific League Chihuahuas. It's the San Diego Padres AAA team, and we now have a USL soccer team, the Locomotives, that's going to begin play in March of this year. We have 2 historic hotels that are being refurbished in our downtown, adding over $300 million in public-private investment. But irrespective of this physical capital, our greatest, most valued resources are our people and our culture. We're the home to the University of Texas at El Paso. We refer to them as UTEP, the Texas Tech University Medical School, a nursing school, and a soon-to-be dental school. Graduates of the Texas Tech Medical School are required to be bilingual in Spanish. We're also the home to Fort Bliss, which is the largest continental U.S.-based military installation. Fort Bliss is the size of Rhode Island. And with White Sands Missile Range, which is just north and contiguous, the combined size is equal to the state of Connecticut. Fort Bliss is 40% of the Department of Defense footprint that they have throughout the world, and it's our largest employer. We also have our fair share of well-known persons. We have the contemporary singer Khalid, and politically with Beto O'Rourke, who I'm sure you've heard of. One of our historical sons was Tom Lee. He was a World War II Life magazine war correspondent, author, and artist. Tom painted murals during the Depression for the WPA, including, he actually did one on the post office here in D.C. But one of his most endearing is in the federal courthouse in El Paso, which is titled The Pass of the North, which depicts our history behind me. Tom has a quote in his oral history that has been repeated by President George W. Bush and others that truly depicts our community. He states, "Sarah and I live on the east side of our mountain. It is the sunrise side, not the sunset side. It is the side to see the day that is coming, not to see the day that is gone. The best day is the day coming, with the work to do, with the eyes wide open, and with the heart grateful." Thank you.
Again, thank you, Mayor Margo, for your incredible leadership. Our next speaker is John Campbell, the Executive Vice President, Director of Corporate Philanthropy and Community Relations for Wells Fargo. John also serves as President of the Wells Fargo Foundation. Today, John is here to announce the 2019 Wells Fargo and USCM Community Wins Grant Program. This is the 5th year of this competitive grant program, which is a collaborative effort between the Conference of Mayors, Wells Fargo, and the Wells Fargo Foundation. Please welcome John Campbell to the stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. Now, I think you were thinking Tim Sloan was coming back, but no, you got me. But seriously, it's an honor to be here. And we are really happy to be a sponsor of the U.S. Council of Mayors. It's one of those organizations that mean a lot to us because we love being around mayors, so it's great to be here. And thank you, Mayor. That was very nice of you. And I see a few faces. We've already done a couple of selfies with the mayor of Edina, Minnesota. I live in Minneapolis. And over my years, I've come to understand the importance of mayors. So I first learned in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Then I learned more in Peoria, Illinois about being a mayor. And then it was really in Phoenix that it became really clear to me the role that a mayor played. I actually helped pass a sales tax with the mayor there for light rail. I know that was a really good learning experience. I moved back to the Twin Cities, and I know both of our mayors from the Twin Cities are here. I don't know if they're in the room, but guess what? I helped pass a gas tax in Minnesota to help the first line of light rail. So yes, I'm a mass transit guy. Some of you people in the room will like that, some of you may not. So let me just say a couple of things about why I'm here. As you heard, I'm the head of the foundation at Wells Fargo, and for 10 years, I've had that honor. It's been a ball. It's a lot more fun to give money away than to collect it. I did that early in my career, so giving it away is a lot of fun. But we see the same challenges that you do, and we're very concerned about the challenges that our cities are facing. And there are a lot of gaps. They're in education, they're in employment opportunities, they're in income, they're in housing, and they're certainly in healthcare. And those are all things that Wells Fargo is also concerned about. And so through our foundation and the rest of our team, we like to work with cities. We'd like to work on the ground with you, as well as through our national philanthropy programs to help strengthen neighborhoods, support economic growth, and improve the lives of people in economically distressed communities. So each year, we work hard to try and invest our shareholders' money in a way to be able to help solve problems. I'm proud to say that last year we gave away over $400 million to over 10,000 organizations, and we believe that that money is making a difference. About half the money is actually invested at a local level. The other half is used for national priorities that we're involved in. So let me jump on to the reason we're here. I want to again recognize the winners from our award last year, And if the guys on the teleprompter could move that forward for me, that would be great. You can tell I don't know everybody's names. But let me just call out and remind you who won awards in 2018. Then I'll wrap up by saying a bit about the plan for 2019. He's moving along. We're almost there. Okay, here we go. I think back up a little bit. This is not going very well, as you can tell. There's a place where the last year's winners were in the script, but if we can't find it, we'll just pass by that. And, oh, yeah, here we go. Thank you. And so the winners from 2018, from Long Beach, California, Mayor Garcia, they helped create a healthy workplace for hourly labor. From Dayton, Ohio, Mayor Whaley, who supported the funding of the Gem City Market in a section of Dayton where 40%, this is impressive, 40% of the population was in the low-income area, and they were a mile from a grocery store. We know about food deserts, don't we? And that was an example. Youngstown, Ohio, Mayor Tito Brown, his support of a program called Revitalize. It was a program that made investments to help stabilize neighborhoods by improving housing and property conditions. So let me lead an applause for all of those folks. And then, of course, no program can recognize everybody, so we have that special runner-up category who received an Outstanding Achievement Award. And in that group from the Boston, Mayor Walsh, Mayor Pete Buttigieg. How did I do? Pete, are you in the room? We'll all know how to say that name, I guess, based on his announcement, but from South Bend, Mayor Pete. And by the way, if you're a Habitat fan, what South Bend and Mayor Pete helped create in South Bend earlier this year with the Carter build was absolutely amazing. That neighborhood was absolutely amazing. So Mayor Pete, if you're not here, please accept our thanks. It was a wonderful project. And then Mayor Barnett from Rochester Hills, I know some of his staff, hello staff, right over there. So these leaders and others in this room really are incredible, and we want to thank you for your leadership in your communities. Okay, here's the part you really want to know. Now here's your chance to get involved this year. So we would like you to nominate up to 3 nonprofits in your community and work that you think is outstanding. We're going to award 8 grants for over $1 million to support city initiatives. The deadline for the nominations is March 22nd. To get information, we have a booth outside. Please stop by there. You can read about it in your newsletter, or you can go on your website, and the information is there. So once again, we really do appreciate the chance to be with all of you today. We're proud of what you accomplish. We hope to be able to be a little bit of help as these important cities move forward. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your conference.
Thanks again, John. Now I'm going to call on the Mayor of Gresham, Oregon, my friend Shane Bemis, to introduce our next speaker.
Good afternoon, mayors. It is a great privilege to introduce to you Senator Jeff Merkley, a respected Oregonian known for his national leadership in forcing tough questions, highlighting the plight of family separations at our country's southern border. And while we have enjoyed watching Senator Merkley's national leadership, as a mayor in his home state, I want you to know that he hasn't lost track of his local communities as well. A couple of months ago, Senator Merkley's staff called our office expressing the senator's desire to visit Gresham. But it wasn't our brand new Boys and Girls Club the senator wanted to visit, nor was it our beautiful new flagship park overlooking Mount Hood and the Columbia River Gorge. The senator wanted to come to Gresham and personally tour our wastewater treatment plant. Well, now, in fairness, our treatment plant's pretty cool. Previously the city of Gresham's largest energy consumer, it is now one of the nation's first net zero wastewater treatment plants. And so the senator came for his visit, asking many detailed questions to our plant manager, so many detailed questions that they've tried to ask him if he had consulting, could get him on a consulting contract. But he's not lost faith of where local government is. He knows what mayors are up against. He has been a strong supporter for my office and the fellow mayors of this great state of Oregon, and he does such a great job for Oregon. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Jeff Merkley.
Thank you so much, Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here with you all, and with not only Shane Bemis from Gresham, but also Ted Wheeler from Portland, and Jason Snyder from Tigard, Steve Calloway from Hillsborough, and Denny Doyle from Beaverton. So thank you to the Oregon mayors for making it all the way across the country. Now, Mayor Bemis was talking about a pretty big accomplishment, taking the biggest energy hog in Gresham and turning it into net positive energy by generating energy from what they call FOG, fats, oils, and grease, which is also a bit of a euphemism for sewage. But you all didn't even give him an applause for that big accomplishment. So how about a little appreciation to Gresham setting that great example? Now, climate chaos is affecting people all over the world, certainly in our states and in our cities. Back home in Oregon, we see our fishermen affected by warmer, smaller streams and warmer, more acidic oceans. Our farmers affected by droughts. We see our forests and our logging industry affected by the forest fires. But we see the cities very much affected. You know, Portland, from some of the smoke this last year, on some days was the 4th most polluted air, I'm told, in the world. And San Francisco, on certain days, was worse than Beijing. So the smoke from those fires is having a big, big impact. And we see different impacts all across America. In New Hampshire, we see warmer winters, meaning more ticks, meaning a lot more Lyme disease. In Florida, we see the red tide that's gone 10 months out of 12 on the Gulf side. In fact, when I was down there, people were not only complaining about the toxins on their lungs, but also the stench from the dying sea life, and we're talking about taking inland vacations. Throughout the Southeast, the impact of the hurricanes, from Idaho on through California, horrific forest fires, and of course the enormous tragedy of the entire town of Paradise being obliterated this last summer. All of this, these facts on the ground, we're not talking computer models somewhere into the future, we're talking facts on the ground right now. And all of this is reinforced by the UN climate report and the 4th national climate assessment that came out a few weeks ago from the Trump administration. And I know you as mayors see the impact in so many other ways, including saltwater intrusion and drained aquifers and floods, and the list goes on and on. Which is why I'm so glad that as mayors you're taking a stand across America, lobbying during the Recovery Act for the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program. How about if we lobby now and get that into the 2020 spending bills at the end of this year? You're adopting a variety of clean air policies, aiming for 100%, and you've spoken out, 400 mayors or so speaking out about being still in for the International Paris Agreement. Thank you to the still-in mayors across America. And then there's all these different projects that you're experimenting with and providing an example to other cities. The example from Gresham with their wastewater treatment, from Greensburg, Kansas with their LED streetlights, Plano, Texas, community-wide energy challenge encouraging a switch to renewables, Evanston, Illinois, community choice electricity aggregation enabling residences and small businesses to utilize renewable energy. Atlanta, Georgia, ensuring that all of their large properties have to be LEED certified repeatedly every 10 years. And Portland, Oregon, with Mayor Ted Wheeler. Mayor, where are you? Somewhere in here? Not seeing him, but the team from Portland, we did an initiative in Oregon, the Clean Energy Community Benefits Initiative. And so this was the people of the city speaking up and saying, hey, what if we were to put a fee on our very largest retailers, a 1% fee, and that 1% fee would proceed to go, and this is on their sales, would proceed to go to a whole variety of energy saving, energy efficiency, social and economic justice projects within the city. And so when we saw initiatives fail all across the country, this one passed 65% to 35%, an enormous victory as we take on climate chaos. So you all deserve a federal partner. You deserve one, but you don't have one. We need partnership at the federal level on modest-sized projects, such as those energy efficiency block grants, renewable energy tax credits, a city energy savings program to go with the rural energy savings program. How about zero-interest loans that would cover the difference in the cost between a diesel bus and an electric bus and be paid back with the savings in maintenance and fuel? How about maintaining the electric car tax credits that are expiring this year for 3 of our major brands made in America? And how about big visions like Keep It in the Ground? Keep It in the Ground is a bill I introduced in 2016 that said our citizen-owned fossil fuel should no longer be leased out to be extracted and burned. If we're going to work in partnership with the rest of the world to take on climate chaos, we can't still be selling what we own as fossil fuels. Or how about another big vision? In 2017, I introduced 100 by 50, 100% clean and renewable energy by the year 2050. And this laid out a vision or a roadmap for every energy sector of our economy. It included a just transition for fossil fuel workers. It included economic and social justice for underserved or minority inner-city communities. It proceeded to lay out that vision in detail so that we could start to wrestle with implementing such a roadmap. Well, that vision, the principles of that vision, are being represented now by another name, and that is the Green New Deal. And I encourage you to think about the principles that are in that and to help drive this strategy of utilizing renewable energy and driving this transition to 100%. Now, we are in the place where so much has happened over our generation. In a single generation, we've increased carbon in our atmosphere by 30% from the time I was born until I'm standing here on this stage before you. In a single generation, we have decimated a large share of the world's forests, the lungs of our planet. In a single generation, we have seen a 5-fold increase in the rate of carbon pollution, going from about 0.5 point per year to about 2.5 parts per million in a single year. So as much as we think we're taking on this challenge, the problem is actually getting worse with every decade. We're accelerating our carbon pollution, we're not deaccelerating and eliminating, which means we as human civilization have a lot of work to do very, very quickly. The feedback loops are scary. There was a picture a couple weeks ago of a lake in Alaska that was boiling. And you might initially think, well, that's a hot spring. But it wasn't a hot spring. It was cold water boiling with thawing methane from underneath the lake coming up, and coming up at such a rapid rate, it was a rolling boil. Well, methane, as we all know, pound for pound or space for space, far more damaging to our climate than is carbon dioxide. Over a 20-year period, about 80 times, 84 times more damaging. Franklin Roosevelt said these are unprecedented and unusual times in which we must resolve to resume the country's march along the path of real progress, of real justice, of real equality. It was a time, he said, for a new deal for the American people. Well, these are unprecedented and unusual times. We see devastation of rural assets with forests and farming and fishing, but we see enormous costs being imposed on our urban centers that you all work to represent and improve. So it's a time where we all have to come together. Forget Democrat and Republican, or East Coast and West Coast, or rural or urban. This is a challenge unlike any human civilization has faced on this planet. And so we can take it on at the federal level, but not right now. Responsibility is shifted to the local level, to our cities. And as city leaders, so many of you have signed up for the vision of 100% renewable energy and putting out an action plan to take the first steps in that direction. If you haven't signed up for that vision yet, please consider doing so. The Sierra Club is working with cities all over the nation, and more than 90 cities have now signed up to that effort. Consider doing that. Consider working with your colleges, with your places of worship, and with your companies to develop a 100% resolution and an action plan. Some 75 or so Fortune 500 companies have laid out a 100% vision and an action plan for their companies. So this is something that can involve all of us at every level. In fact, it must involve all of us at every level working together in this fight to save our beautiful blue-green planet for this generation and all the generations to come. Thank you so much.
I want to thank Senator Merkley for being with us here today. When our next speaker took office 5 years ago, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio made pre-K for every child a reality in the nation's largest city. Mayors all across the country followed suit. In the years since, New York has been at the forefront of affordable housing, worker protections, and mental health. And this year, Mayor de Blasio came out of the gate with more big ideas that he's going to share with us here today. So please join me in welcoming USCM trustee and the mayor of New York City, the Big Apple, Bill de Blasio.
Thank you so much, Steve. Steve, I have to tell you, you have been providing tremendous leadership for this organization. I want to thank you. Everyone give Steve a round of applause. Thank him for the good work he's doing. Now, I have to tell you, I had the joy of being in Columbia, South Carolina with Steve Benjamin back during the leadership meeting back in September. And I want to tell you, everyone, you do not know what love really is, what true love really is, until you spend time walking around Columbia, South Carolina with Steve Benjamin. Because he loves his city and his city loves him back. And it's a beautiful thing to see. But I have to tell you, I look back fondly to September because it feels like a long, long time ago. I don't think any of us imagined that when we gathered here, we would be in the midst of the longest government shutdown in United States history. And I have to tell you something. As a mayor in my city, I've led my city through all sorts of challenges, through terrorist attacks, through the Ebola crisis, through the worst blizzard in our history. And every time, I knew it was my job to reassure people, to tell the people of my city everything was going to be okay. And I was ready to do that. Every mayor in this room knows that's part of our job. And when we know it, we can make sure things are going to be okay. We can tell people that. We can give them hope. We can give them confidence. Last week was the first time in over 5 years that I've been mayor of New York City that I could not face the cameras and give the people of my city that reassurance. You know, my team just finished running the numbers on how hard this shutdown is going to hit our city, what it's going to do to everyday New Yorkers. In our city alone, everyday people are going to lose $500 million every month in direct support, things that make it possible for people to make ends meet. $500 million every month. 2 million people I represent. People who are struggling to get by will lose food stamps, they'll lose Section 8 rent money, they'll lose school lunches. No matter what we do, no matter how hard we try, no matter how deep we dig, there is no way that the city of New York can possibly plug a gap that wide. And I know that every mayor in this room is in the same impossible situation. And we know we can't make people whole when our federal government fails us. And that makes me angry. It makes me angry because we spend our days trying to keep our streets safe. We spend our days trying to fix our schools. We try and make up for a federal government that won't invest in housing or roads or transit. We somehow, everyone in this room, somehow we balance our budgets and we save for a rainy day, and then we get handed this shutdown. And it is a man-made crisis. It's a crisis created in the Oval Office that threatens everything all of us have worked so hard to accomplish. It didn't have to be this way. And our cities deserve better than this, and working Americans deserve better than this. I want to applaud everyone in this room for stepping up in the middle of this crisis, and a particular thank you to Washington Mayor Muriel Bowser, who has been so strong, making sure people got the food they need in the midst of this crisis. The stories we are reading, that we're hearing, the things we're seeing, what we're hearing from our own people. This is what this shutdown is doing. A lot of you may have heard the story of the grandmother trying to eke out $50 a day, driving an Uber so she can pay for groceries and pay for diapers for her granddaughter. On the news this morning, a middle-aged man who spent 20 years in public service who now worries he is about to lose his home to foreclosure. Or the diabetic down to her last 2 vials of insulin, rationing what's left. She summed up the situation's cost, the human cost, in one heartbreaking sentence. She said, "I just went to bed and I hoped I'd wake up." That's what's happening in this country. And this is a moment of acute crisis. And it has laid bare something that has been broken for a long, long time. For many of the families that we serve every day, people who work so hard, the reality is that missing a single paycheck has brought them to their knees. That is the perilous insecurity in which working people have lived in this country for years. And all across this country, working people haven't been paid what they deserve. They're not living the lives they deserve. There are millions of people in my city and tens of millions all over this country who are boxed into lives that just aren't working for them and their families. And we know this. We see it with our own eyes, no matter how hard they try, no matter how long the hours they work. Their budgets overwhelm them, their schedules, the stress in their lives, it's become too much. And we all understand it, we all feel it. The constant pressure undermining the quality of our lives. I know you can relate to this. Go and ask the people you represent these simple questions. Ask them, are you spending enough time with your family? Do you have enough time for yourself? Do you see your life getting better this year, or are you just hanging on? Whether your city is big or small, whether it's urban or rural, whether it's east or west, the answers are going to be the same. We know the root of the problem. For decades, working people have gotten more and more productive. They've worked longer and longer hours, and then at the same time, they have gotten less and less of the wealth that they create. And the sad truth is, it's no accident. It's an agenda that has dominated our country from Reaganomics to Trump's tax giveaway to the corporations and the wealthy. An agenda that spreads a conventional wisdom about all the things we can't do, that the richest nation in the world can't afford health care for all its people, that we can't afford to invest in public transit and infrastructure, that we can't afford to give our kids early childhood education or free college tuition, that we have no choice but to watch this planet burn up slowly but surely, and somehow we can't afford to save it. That's the conventional wisdom. Here's what I have to say to that conventional wisdom. We actually do have the money to solve these problems, and I know where the money is. This country has spent decades taking from working people and concentrating the wealth in the hands of the 1%. That's where the money is. Washington told working people not to worry, all that money will trickle down and find its way to them. It never did. It's time for this country to recognize there's plenty of money in the world. There's plenty of money in this nation. It's just in the wrong hands. The 1% may have gamed the system all these years, but it doesn't have to be that way. And right now, cities big and small are showing this whole nation the kind of country we can have when we do things the other way around. Under Mayor Melvin Carter, St. Paul just became the latest city to raise its minimum wage to $15 per hour. In Philadelphia, Mayor Jim Kenney just required businesses to implement a fair work week so people could have time with their families and their children. Charlotte Mayor Vi Lyles, Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley, San Antonio Mayor Ron Nirenberg, they're all investing big in universal pre-K, every child getting a strong early start. In Seattle, Mayor Jenny Durkan just signed a bill called the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, helping those hardworking people. And earlier this month, I announced that New York City will guarantee health care for all our people. Guarantee. No matter your income, no matter where you were born in the nation's largest city, you will get the health care you need. It is a guarantee, and when people know once and for all it is guaranteed, my friends, they'll actually go to the doctor. They won't end up in the emergency room as a last resort. When you know you can go to a primary care doctor, when you actually have the name and the address of a doctor, it's your doctor, people will get healthy. Families will get healthy. We all become stronger when everyone gets to be healthy. And that's not all. We also recognize that people needed something else. They needed to get some more time back because we're all living such busy, such rushed lives, and we need time for ourselves and our families. So this year, New York City will become the first city in the nation to mandate 2 weeks of paid personal time for all working people. It's time we give working people back some of the wealth and prosperity they've created with their hard-earned time. Their labor has made such a difference. They need to benefit from it. And we all deserve to be there for our families, for the people we love, but also to take care of ourselves. We deserve a life that's not just running from one thing to another. We deserve some happiness in our lives. And if you think about it, that's what government should be all about. It's in our founding document, isn't it? The pursuit of happiness. Well, in one way, that's what we all apply ourselves to, helping people to live better. Giving parents more time to actually enjoy their kids and teach them, nurture them. Giving health care to everyone means that people not only live better, but they have some time because they're not in that emergency room hour after hour. They're not hospitalized when they don't have to be. Giving workers a bigger part of the paycheck that they already earned gives them the time and the freedom to live a better life. Don't let anyone tell you this is impossible. Don't let them tell you it's too costly, because in cities all across the country, we are burying the conventional wisdom. We're showing that things can be done a different way, a better way. There is a new agenda, and you see it all over this country. It's an agenda that favors working people and lifts them up. You can see it in city halls from Birmingham, Alabama to Boulder, Colorado, from New Orleans to New York. We are showing we can do the things that we were told for so long were impossible. We can put working people first. We can give them a fair share of the wealth that they create. Cities are showing the way, and my friends, when cities lead, the rest of the country follows, and it makes it a better country for everyone. Thank you. Keep up the good work, everyone. God bless you all.
Thank you again, Mayor de Blasio. I'm going to call back to the stage Mayor Shane Bemis for an update on the leadership he's been providing with some of the most dynamic young leaders in the country on a youth involvement initiative. Shane?
Thank you, Mayor Benjamin, and thank you to you and to Tom Cochran for carving out some space for this distinguished conference to consider our future by engaging our youth. I'm very pleased to report on the progress of our Mayor's Youth Involvement Task Force. During our annual meeting in Boston, we launched the Youth Involvement Task Force with the goal of helping mayors engage directly with youth in their cities. We heard from young leaders like David Hogg and Alfonso Calderon of Parkland. We heard from a tenacious young woman who is partnering with Mayor Walsh in leading efforts within the Boston Youth Council. We also heard from 15 youth from around the world who are working with their local leaders to address some of the most important issues of the day. After Boston, we knew that we had a lot of work to do, and we knew that we had a lot to learn. We launched a best practice survey to hear about what mayors are doing to involve youth in policymaking, leadership development, internship programs, and voter registration. We found that mayors are doing some great work in each of these areas. 54 cities participated in the survey. 80% of the cities surveyed had an active youth council that engaged in policy. 89% had a program that helped youth learn leadership and professional skills. Also 89% had a thriving internship for programs for their youth, perhaps the single most important thing any mayor can do for the future. And 54% of the cities surveyed engaged in voter registration opportunities. So we took what we found in our survey and results and created a best practice report so that mayors could learn from those who are already going above and beyond in these areas. The report's in front of you, and I encourage everyone to take a look at it. Over the summer, we wanted to help move the needle on voter registration. So we worked with David Hogg and the students from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School to launch Mayors for Our Lives, to energize mayors around registering voters. Mayors hosted events, visited schools, and participated in Get Out the Vote campaigns to ensure that all eligible residents could go to the polls. More than 200 mayors, Democrats, Republicans, and independents participated in this effort. And as we saw during the midterms, a record number of youth showed up to make their voices heard. I want to thank all of the mayors who joined in Mayors for Our Lives and helped make it possible. We have a lot of great work ahead of us, and I highly encourage all mayors to join our task force so that all young people in our cities have a seat at the table and a chance to realize their potential as future leaders. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to one of those young leaders who is making an impact in so many ways. He turned his worst day, a horrible tragedy at his school, into a powerful national movement. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. David Hogg.
Thank you. I want to start off just to talk about the shutdown a little bit. I promise I won't go on too long. But as a child that comes from a teacher and a retired FBI agent, I know what it's like to go through a shutdown. As a child that grew up in a household in Los Angeles, oftentimes we would struggle in my own household to, make ends meet because housing is expensive in California. Housing is expensive in Southern California, where I lived for 14 years before I moved to Florida in the middle of my freshman year when the FBI transferred my father. I just spent a couple minutes volunteering at Jose Andres' restaurant on Pennsylvania Avenue to help feed federal workers. And what I think a lot of people don't realize about this shutdown is these are not just 800,000 numbers. These are 800,000 families. I just worked with people to feed a family of 11 because the father didn't have enough money to come and pay for groceries. That is not the America that we should have right now. It is 2019. And this is one of the most bipartisan groups of government leaders in America and some of the future federal leaders of America. And one thing that I would encourage each and every one of you to do is continue your bipartisanship with the understanding that when you shut down a government, it's not just a political stunt. You are actively upsetting families. You are actively making children question where their next meal is going to come from. You are sacrificing over 1 million people's housing because many people face the risk of eviction right now because their rent is not being subsidized by the federal government. Primarily in zip codes that are oftentimes affected by gun violence that politicians don't like to talk about because either they don't live there or they just don't care about them because they don't see them as politically important. And what we have to do across America is come together as not just as Americans, but as human beings with the understanding that no matter where gun violence is occurring, no matter how many people are killed in an instance of gun violence, if you are a mayor and you're one of the many that get a text on your phone when somebody is killed in your city as a result of preventable gun violence, you need to care about that person no matter whether it's one person that's shot or whether it's 17 like it was at my high school, because ending gun violence in one zip code is not ending gun violence. Ending gun violence in every zip code for every person, no matter what they look like, no matter where they come from, is what ending gun violence doesn't need to look like. It's what it has to look like. As I'm sure many of you have future plans for Congress and the federal government, I hope you continue to realize that you as a politician and political leader cannot base the validity of someone's violence or suffering based off of their zip code, the color of their skin, the sexual orientation that they have, or the number of figures in their bank account, because in America, we treat everybody equal because they are all human beings. Moving on from that, it's time to look to what kind of America we wish to create. The America that I look to create is an America with specifically two things. One, an America that actually represents what it says it does on paper, and one where gun violence doesn't occur anymore. And one of the best ways of doing that is getting the people that are most at risk for gun violence involved in their local government, to give them hope, to give them representation from their community, from a young person. Because the reason why youth voter turnout is so low across the country is mainly because of two reasons. First off, we don't see people that look like us running for office. Whether that be our age or the color of our skin, oftentimes from the thousands of young people that I've worked with across the country, we want to see change. We want to create change in this country that oh so needs it, where the young are so oppressed, where over 800,000 families, I will remind you again, don't know where their next meal is going to come from. Many of them have more than 2 children. So that's over 1.6 million children that don't know how they're going to be fed. That's over 1.6 million moms and dads that don't know where their next meal is going to come from. And the best thing that we can do is what we started to do over the past year since the shooting at my high school. Thanks to the work of Mayor Eric Garcetti and Mayor de Blasio, we came together and formed what's known as Mayors for Our Lives, which was a convening of over 200 mayors to come together and work to create youth voter registration drives in their cities. And because of work like theirs and many, hopefully others in the crowd that I hope will join Mayors for Our Lives in the future, in Florida this year, the voting numbers just came out, and we nearly doubled youth voter turnout for 18 to 29-year-olds. As mayors, I hope that, as leaders, I hope that you recognize that a young person speaking out, don't say that a young person speaking out is not what this country needs. That is far from the truth. Don't write them off as being too naive or too uneducated to create change, because a young person speaking out and other people from previous generations saying that they don't know what they're talking about is not an excuse for them not to be politically involved. That is an excuse to fund their education. Young people, just like every other demographic, need representation within local government. The best way to get young people involved in your local government is to stop writing them off. And stop writing off whatever they're talking about as just plain complaining because they're a young person. Because any person that's talking about an issue that affects them is not complaining. They're talking about an issue that they don't want the next generation to face. And it is our responsibility as people that live in America for the next generation to make sure that the next generation has a better and brighter future than the current one. And the only way that we do that is by fighting for automatic voter registration in our cities. The only way by doing that is making sure that everybody in America, no matter where they come from, no matter whether or not they have the proper identification, is able to go out and vote. As mayors, I encourage every one of you, if you don't have it already, to follow cities like Boston in creating a youth council where young people are able to speak their voice. Or, for example, in Los Angeles, where there is a youth task force to talk about gun violence, because we know that the primary groups affected by gun violence have to be the ones to talk about it. And lastly, as mayors, I hope that you understand that approaching gun violence and stopping gun violence is not just stopping mass shootings. Stopping gun violence is stopping every shooting. And one of the best ways of doing that is by going out there and funding violence intervention programs that don't over-police our youth and don't over-incarcerate them and don't make them feel even more isolated from their own community, but use people that have been on similar life tracks of the at-risk youth in your communities to talk to them and stop them from being incarcerated and help work with them to stop gun violence. Because one of the #1 predictors of somebody going out and shooting somebody else within cities is being shot before. So if we don't have people to respond at our hospitals, if we don't have people like Erica Ford in New York City, who have fought for over 17 years to end gun violence in Jamaica, Queens, and in one community, have been able to take that community from 17 murders in 1 year to 1 murder in 17 years, with only a couple $1 million, not only is that morally responsible, that is fiscally responsible, because it costs states billions of dollars a year to treat preventable gun violence that never should have occurred in the first place. So take a long, hard look at your city and realize that the youth do want to be involved. The only thing preventing them, that may be preventing them, is other people not listening. So go out there and listen, and go out there and fight for your youth. Because the second that we fight for the young men of today and the young women of today is when we create the better politicians for tomorrow that don't shut down the government and starve families. Thank you.
Remain so excited about David and all of his young colleagues, their leadership. Huge believer that activism without action is just a conversation, and seeing his continued leadership in this space is heartwarming. The future is indeed bright. Our next speaker needs no introduction to this conference. Cory Booker was mayor of Newark, New Jersey, and a member of the U.S. Conference of Mayors from 2006 to 2013. As mayor, he chaired our conference's task force on educational excellence. As senator, he's been on the forefront of key national and international issues. His most recent accomplishment includes his bipartisan work with Tim Scott, my senator from South Carolina, to include opportunity zone provisions in last year's tax law. As a co-author and architect of a recently passed First Step Act, Senator Booker was instrumental in the most sweeping criminal justice reform law passed in decades, again on a bipartisan basis. Senator Booker is a defender of human rights, a promoter of justice for all people, and a person who always tells you where he stands. Mayors and guests, please welcome a former mayor and now senator from the great state of New Jersey, our friend, Cory Booker.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I cannot tell you what this means to me to be a mayor. The Wall Street Journal, when I got elected to the United States Senate, said there's only been 21 people in the United States history to go straight from being a mayor to being a United States senator. And I'll tell you what, that's probably why we have such problems with federal government, is because there are not more mayors there. In fact, when I took my first trip to DC, I was a newly minted mayor, 2006. And I'm sitting in a big meeting, just minding my own business, listening to the speakers, and this very senior senator from the biggest state population-wise in our nation gets up and runs over to me, and she goes, "You," and I'm like, "Senator Feinstein, what did I do?" She goes, "You have the hardest job in all of American politics." And so I want to be very practical right now in my remarks. I don't want to be lofty. I want to talk to other people who are technicians, who have to get it done, who folk know where you live, who you can't shop in your supermarket in half an hour. You got to allocate like an hour and a half and make sure you have cards to do constituent services. I want to talk to people not as the United States Senator from New Jersey, but really just as a fellow mayor. Now, there is no, as Farewell LaGuardia said, Republican or Democratic way to fix a pothole. We live in a nation where there is common pain, but we've lost our sense of common purpose. When I was mayor, I worked with anybody who could help me fix things, and I happened to be mayor of a city where I was elected. It was right before the globe fell into a recession, and when the globe is in a recession, or the country is in a recession, in many of our American cities, you see depression-like circumstances. And what I learned very quickly is that so much of government often does things that are stupid. In other words, we would much rather invest on the back end of a problem than make the smart investments early on that would prevent the problems from getting acute in the first place. We live in a nation that has so many things that you all understand when I talk about the value of FQHCs, federally qualified health centers, and the difference that it can make in giving people access to preventative care, as opposed to doing the more expensive thing of not making that strategic government investment and paying so much more on the back end of that problem. Seattle, Washington, they did a study that just looked at what's more expensive, to have mentally ill homeless people on the streets or to put them in supportive housing. Now, all of us who've constructed supportive housing here know how expensive supportive housing is, but Seattle ran the numbers. And they found for about 23 people that they saved their taxpayers about $1 million by putting them in expensive housing. Why? Because everyone in this room knows where people who are homeless and mentally ill often end up, in our hospital emergency rooms and in our jails. We have to, as a country, stop doing what's stupid and expensive and start investing in the things that are smart, economically effective, and reflect our morals. We live in a country with unconscionable gun violence. This young man who spoke up speaks to me. I'm the only United States senator that lives in an inner city community. The median income, according to my last census, where I live is $14,000 per household. I had shootings in my neighborhood last week. I had Shahad Smith killed at the top of the block where I live. Do you know how expensive a gunshot wound is? Many of you do, because I've gone to my hospital emergency rooms and asked them for non-fatal gunshot wounds. The costs are hundreds of thousands of dollars. When we have common sense things that we could do, forget left or right, forget Republican or Democrat. If we just did a balance sheet analysis and layered on top of that our moral values, we would be a nation that knows what's more expensive, giving that child stability at home, not having a parent constantly worrying about a paycheck. I have a friend of mine that works for an IHOP, works full-time job, tries to catch extra shifts, trying to raise 3 boys. Even with all of that hard work, she doesn't make enough money, so she relies on food stamps. She relies on public housing. The instability in her life because of low wages has a multiplier of costs to us as a citizenry. When her child is sick, the hospital is right across the street from the IHOP. She has to make that terrible decision that millions of Americans do. Like, do I stay here and get this paycheck for the day, or do I go across the street where my child is gasping for air and be there by my child's bedside? We're making decisions that are costing the most valuable natural resource this country has, and everyone in this room, Republican or Democrat, knows that the most valuable natural resource in a global knowledge-based economy is the genius of our children. And yet we have a nation that won't even make the smart investments in water infrastructure. I've had a lot of meetings with mayors. I was just across the street meeting with some mayors from the South talking about water infrastructure. You all know that's not the sexiest issue to be talking about. But when you sit with mayors, you're talking about, hey, how can I squeeze more efficiency out of my parking meters because I have urgent needs? We have a nation right now where people think Flint, Michigan's an anomaly, but it's not. Over 1,000 of our jurisdictions, children have more than twice the blood lead levels of the kids in Flint. And what cost is that to us? It is a human tragedy. It is morally irresponsible for the most powerful nation, the wealthiest nation, to have children living in communities where it's easier to find unleaded gasoline than unleaded water. But we know we have a nation that if you have an elevated blood level, you don't even need to have lead poisoning, that child's success in life goes down, their productivity goes down, their executive functions are inhibited. It's more likely for them to get in trouble. These are not left-right issues. These are issues about how do we make our country strong, how do we make our country economically vibrant, how do we make ourselves successful. I remember I got down to the Senate, and thank God, the advice from Bill Bradley, meet with people on both sides of the political aisle, which I did, to have friendships and relationships. I remember talking to one senator. I can show you evidence-based how to invest $1 of government taxpayer money to save $5 to $7 for taxpayers. He says, wow, that sounds incredible. What is this? As it's not sexy, it's called nurse-family partnerships. You have an at-risk mom get a visit from a nurse. Not only does that reduce emergency room visits, it actually reduces the chances of getting in trouble with the police, not just of the kid, but even the mother. We have got to get back to a country that makes smart investments in infrastructure, smart investments in tech and innovation centers, smart investments in human capital, because we are hurting as a nation as a result of not doing it. I'll tell you right now, it kills me that I know in the New York metropolitan area, which I like to call the Newark metropolitan area, $1 invested in infrastructure in that area nationally returns over 100% return. In my area, $2 to $3. We have trains along the Northeast Corridor now that run half an hour slower than they did in the 1960s. Meanwhile, China just has completed 18,000 miles, this is according to President Carter, who just told me this, of high-speed rail. We are letting other nations out-invest us, and this is why my time as a senator has been trying to do things practically that will empower leaders around this country to design programs that can make a difference and get investment. Look, the criminal justice reform bill we had, I like to argue this from a moral issue, but dear God, when our nation is letting its bridges and tunnels and roads crumble, the one area we out-infrastructured the planet Earth was building prisons and jails to warehouse human potential. We were building a new prison and jail in this country, one every 10 days from the time I was in law school to the time I was mayor of the city of Newark. More people in jail in the South and on college campuses. And what do? We're treating the biggest mental health facilities in our country, are our prisons and jails, which aren't addressing the problem and are the more expensive way to do it. Why did I work with Tim Scott on the opportunity zones? Because capital is lazy. Every mayor here knows you have investment-worthy projects, but you can't attract institutional capital. You can't get developers to come. And so we passed what will end up being the most powerful economic development legislation coming out of Washington in decades, because now that everyone here has a shot at having an opportunity zone, heck, I've been meeting with people all over the country. In Baltimore, Prudential Financial is going to be making its first opportunity zone investments in converting a lone-standing brownfield site into a vibrant area. In Heflin, Alabama, a vacant public school in the city's opportunity zone is being redeveloped into a $12 million state-of-the-art memory care center and assisted living facilities for the area's growing senior population. And HBCUs, launched an historically black college-focused opportunity fund that will invest in the development of mixed-use properties and communities near HBCUs. We can do impossible things in America. There is no problem in this country. There is no problem in this country that we can't address. The problem is not can we, it's do we have the collective will, and it brings me to my close. Look, y'all, I'm this guy that, went off to college and got a graduate degree at Stanford, went off to Oxford, came to Yale, and my dad's like, boy, you got more degrees in the month of July, but you ain't hot. Life ain't about the degrees you get, it's about the service you give. And so my hero, I didn't want to get into politics, my hero was Jeffrey Canada, the Harlem Children's Zone. So I decided to move into a tough neighborhood like Jeffrey Canada did in the middle of the Central Ward of Newark, New Jersey, the neighborhood I still live in. The map behind me in my desk in City Hall is the map of the Central Ward of Newark, because I will never forget the people that brought me to the game. And I want to confess something to you, because I didn't have the vision that's in this room when I first started. I moved on to Martin Luther King Boulevard, and I was moving my stuff into my apartment next to an abandoned building being used for drugs, across the street from the projects, and somebody stole my stuff out my car. I was a little intimidated by the neighborhood, but there's an old definition of faith that says when you come to the end of all the light you know, faith is when you're about to step into the darkness, one of two things is going to happen. Either you find solid ground underneath you, or the universe will send you people who teach you how to fly. And so I got my BA from Stanford, but my PhD on the streets of Newark. And I'll tell you, one of my best professors was a woman named Miss Virginia Jones. And I walked up to her, this arrogant young law student, knocked on her door, and she said, "Who is it?" And I'm Cory Booker, I'm from Yale Law School, and I'm moving into the neighborhood to help out. And she gives me this look like, boy, you're the one that needs some help. She takes me down to Martin Luther King Boulevard, turns around and says, "You want to help me? Tell me what you see around you." Now, mayors, you would do it differently. But back then in my 20s, I said, "What do I see?" She goes, "Yeah, describe the neighborhood." I said, "I see a crack house." I started describing like I described to you. And the more I talked, the more upset she looked. And then finally, I stopped talking, and she goes, "Boy, you can't help me." And she starts walking away. Now, I'm confused, so I run after her, and I grab her from behind, very respectfully. And I turn her around, and I said, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, waves her finger in my face. She goes, "Boy, you need to understand something. The world you see outside of you is a reflection of what you have inside of you. And if you're one of those people who only sees problems and darkness and despair, that's all there's ever going to be. But if you're one of those stubborn people who every time you open your eyes, you see hope, you see opportunity, you see love, you see the face of God, then you could be one of those people that helps me. I am tired that we have become a nation cynical about our potential. Cynical in the way we look at our problems as if they're bigger than us, when American history is a screaming testimony to the perpetual achievement of the impossible. There were slums and child labor, but people saw public education and workers' rights. There was slavery, people saw freedom. We are a nation that looked into the sky and saw not a dream in the moon, but a destiny. We are the visionary people that has this dream. And on days after Martin Luther King's Day, I want to end with you by challenging you about that dream. There's some folk here from Tennessee. You go to Memphis right now to the site that Martin Luther King was murdered. And there's a little plaque there. I love it when I go, and it's a quote from the Torah. It's a quote from the Bible. It's taken from that moment when Joseph's brothers see Joseph, and they're about to throw him into the well, into the darkness. And I'm telling you right now, we are in the pit right now. These are dark times in America where we're tearing each other apart, when we fail to show a more courageous empathy, when we change a nation that looked to create a beloved community, and now we're just saying we're going to tolerate each other. We are in the pit right now, and we need leaders like you who lead with love. And love is not seeing the child as they are. It's seeing the child as he could be, as he should be, as he will be if we invest in that child. And so what is written there, right where Martin Luther King was murdered, is what Joseph's brothers said when they saw Joseph approaching before they threw him in the pit. But you know, Joseph ascended, he rose up into the palace. I believe that's our destiny, to rise again. We will rise. What does it say? What does it say as I close? What does it say on that little plaque? The words from the Torah are written there. It says, "Behold, here cometh the dreamer. Let us slay him and see what becomes of his dream." My visionary fellow mayors, the dream is in jeopardy. As Langston Hughes said, there's a dream in this land with its back against the wall. To save the dream for one, we must save the dream for all. You all are the dream keepers. You are the visionaries. You are the people, in the words of our ancestors, that don't see things as they are and ask why. You see things as they could be and should be and must be and ask why not. I don't know where America's going, but I know the mayors are going to help lead us to the mountaintop. Thank you, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, how about one more round of applause for Senator Booker? Hey, mayors, did you learn something today? Did you enjoy today? Are you ready for one more plenary session today? Me neither. Hey, listen, we have some fun planned for this evening. There's a few caucus meetings, and we're going to meet around 7 o'clock for the buses to head to the Canadian Embassy. Have a great evening. Enjoy the networking. This meeting is adjourned.
And just a short time ago, senators, a bipartisan group, held a news conference on how to end the